Okay. All righty. So, we I thought this week I would do the positive aspects of the Seder. Um, we Jews are used to many of the negative things. But I thought maybe it would be good to do the positive aspects of the Seder. Yes, surely. Is that your hand up? No. Okay. Just making sure we didn't have any, not confusing anything. Please, people can put their hand up virtually. You can throw things into the chat. I'll keep my chat open to make sure that I catch everything. Okay. So,
Rabbi, can
yes,
can you
yes.
just answer me one question? Will you please answer the question that I had from Pesach? At least, sorry, from the class before. I had a class.
If you remind me the question, I might be able to answer it.
Ooh. Okay.
You have two devices on, Michael, it sounds like.
Yeah, yes.
So
Sorry,
if that's going to be a problem. So if you remember the question, you want to, okay, I'll wait for a second while you remember. If you,
not to bother. Carry on.
okay, I'm just putting everybody on mute just to avoid any sound problems. But if you do want to have a question, please do not hesitate to unmute yourself and just shout out. Okay, so I'm going to start with a joke. My Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Amital, used to run a Hesder Yeshiva. Hesder Yeshivot combined military service um, and yeshiva study. And there was a general came to visit the yeshiva. He saw the bookshelf. It was books strewn all over the place, not arranged in any kind of neat order. And the general said to Rav Amital, he says, "What is this?" He says, "En Seder. There's no order here." And the Rav Amital said, "In Judaism, there is no Seder. There is no order. And if there is ever order one night, we say Manishtana. Why is this different?" So let's we're going to try and break down the Seder in a way that you may not have been used to looking at it. The way most people look at the Seder is chronological. It's a script. Go from one end to the other. That's it, right? It's an instruction book. It's an IKEA manual, right? What happens when you skip steps in an IKEA manual? You assemble it wrong. You figure out that the pizza parts are hard to fit together that way. But the Seder doesn't work exactly like that. So um, it's good to take a bit of a different perspective just for a moment to say to ourselves, okay, well, what is meant to be accomplished on this Seder thing? So there are five mitzvot of the night of the Seder. There are two of them which are biblical, and there are three of them which are rabbinic, or at least they're rabbinic today. So, what are the biblical mitzvot? The two biblical mitzvot are eating matzah, and the other one is Sipur Yitziat Mitzrayim. Um, and they have their own individual challenges. I would say, in certain ways, the matzah one is the easier one. You buy it, you eat it, very easy. Telling the story of the Seder, that is a much more complicated uh, enterprise. We will get deeper into all of these things. Now, what are the three rabbinic mitzvot? The three rabbinic mitzvot are going to be drinking 4 cups of wine. They are going to be eating the bitter herbs, and they are going to be recitation of the Hallel. You might say to yourself, wait a minute, Rabbi, hold your horses. I know that I read the Torah, and in the Torah it says, Al matzot ruhim tochluhu. You shall eat them on matzah and bitter herbs. Eat the Passover offering. So how can you tell me that the maror is only rabbinic? And the way that the rabbis understand this is that the maror is biblical only when it comes together with the Passover offering. And so this is to appreciate this, you need to at least understand that the maror, it comes in. The rabbis say you should still eat it, but really it belongs together with the Passover offering. And the Passover offering, we do not we do not bring today. Although I am sure that that was a very delicious part of the Seder. Now, let's go back to those two mitzvot that were biblical. Eating matzah. I promise you, I will get to the eating matzah part, um, and um, and then we will. But we're going to focus first on the telling of the story. And here we get to the text of the Haggadah. Now, um, there is both technique and substance that is involved in this in the telling of the Haggadah. The technique, first of all, you have to well, let's build layers. The first layer of the Haggadah is you have to understand it. So some people think, oh, I am going to be a very good religious Jew. I am going to read the whole Seder in Hebrew. Very laudable. But that is only laudable if you speak Hebrew. If you do not understand Hebrew, then you have to access some level of translation. Simply saying the Haggadah, Avadim Hayinu Levar Mitzrayim, Lo Hotzianu Hashem Mitzrayim, right? Hare Anu Vanenu Vanenu Meshuadim Levar Mitzrayim, just reciting those words, not going to be fulfilling the mitzvah. You have to understand what you are saying. And so and I know people tell me, Zaydi used to read the Haggadah beginning cover to cover in Hebrew, and we also sit around. That's not what I do not believe that's what a Seder is supposed to look like. The Seder is supposed to be something which is understood. And I would say maybe even more than understood, it's meant to be felt. It's meant to be experienced. But that can be somewhat challenging. So I'm going to first of all say that let's get into technique. First technique that is important is that Seder is meant to be interactive. In fact, if you read the Talmud, and even as it's presented in the Halacha, some of the things that you do at the Seder are designed entirely to get people to ask questions, right? So when we break the middle matzah, that is designed to be something that looks weird to someone. It's designed to look like, what are you breaking a matzah and hiding a piece? The stealing of the afikomen is meant to be an interactive piece. Sometimes that plays an outsized role. I personally think you need to manage that one slightly differently. The karpas, right? One of the reasons we dip the karpas, we wash our hands beforehand, all of that is meant to give people an opportunity to ask a question. It is actually halachically true, although I will not give you this instruction fully. This will be a half-hearted instruction. But it is true that if somebody asks a question on their own, you do not need to say the manishtana, right? Spontaneous questions are the best questions of all, right? Do something weird so that people say, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Then that sort of inspires questions. Now, there are other things that you are able to do. And that is, this year, I think the only candies that I could get my hands on were marshmallows. But in previous years, I have been able to get like jelly candies or other things, gummies that are kosher for Passover. And you reward people for good questions or good answers. This is a technique which goes all the way back to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says that you give out, back then it was roasted nuts. That was candy in the second century, third century, and they would give them out to the children. I know people who went to a Rosh Yeshiva's Seder, right? So you have the head of the yeshiva, and you figure, okay, wow, he's a very sophisticated, smart guy. He's learned his whole life. He's got so much wisdom and knowledge, right? He's gonna be a super complicated Seder. It's gonna go to, it's gonna go to 4 o'clock in the morning. It's gonna be, super mystical, etc. Nope. What was the Seder? His grandchildren were sitting around the table, and he was asking them questions and giving them candies and nuts. That's what the Seder was. aspect of the Seder which is meaningful is engaging people in conversation stories in the story of the Exodus. And so you want to make something which is engaging. Um, hold on. I'm just going to share my screen. I want to show you something. Now, a little bit about background of the Haggadah itself. Um, here we go. The Haggadah itself is a document that has been developed over many hundreds of years. The first Haggadah that we have goes back to the time of the Gaonim. The Seder of Rav Amram Gaon may be one of our first Haggadot. We know of the Rambam codifies a Haggadah in his Code of Jewish Law. And then we have various other Haggadot over the course of time. One of the things we learn about Haggadot is that they accumulate paragraphs. At different times and places, people add different things. Not everything in your Haggadah must be said. And so soon there will be coming out. This actually is our Pesach primer, which will soon to be come out. And one of the things we include in our Pesach primer is this table. Now, just explaining the table so that you're able to use it later on. Seder is going to start at 8:53 p.m. this year, right? Which is not exactly good for 8-year-olds who want to be at a Seder, right? Because they're like their bedtime is before the Seder even starts, right? So it's very difficult. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this, but the point is that the idea of doing an extra long Seder is not a great idea. And so we've created this way of knowing what is important to say and what's not important to say. So things which are numbered 1 in the table are of utmost importance, and anybody who skips it, you may not properly fulfill the mitzvah of telling the story of the Exodus. Number 2 is of something which is of customary importance. In other words, you can skip a number 2, but people might say, wait a minute, why are you skipping number 2? What's a number 2? Dayenu is a number 2. Dayenu is a song that was put into the Seder, but the Mishnah does not tell you have to say Dayenu. The Halacha does not tell you have to say Dayenu. If you skip Dayenu, would you have a kosher Seder? Yes. If you skip Dayenu, would your mother say to you, wait a minute, why did we skip Dayenu? Right? It doesn't feel like a Seder if we didn't sing Dayenu. And so with Dayenu, we put that as a number 2. Number 3 is something of the traditional text, but can be omitted if you need to. Maybe one of the best examples of that is Chad Gadya. Chad Gadya, you can have a kosher Seder without Chad Gadya. And a lot of people might not complain if you don't have Chad Gadya, because by then they're going to be super tired. It's going to be super late. But anyway, so I'm going to just go over the chart quickly. Kadesh, Kiddush, that's an absolute requirement. Orchatz, Karpatz, right, washing your hand, dipping green vegetable, these are all requirements. I'm not going to go through everything. Remember I told you that if somebody asks a question, you don't need to say Manishtana. I said, but that's the law, but I'm not going to tell you to do it that way. That's because I'm afraid to say, maybe Manishtana needs to be said. So I put that as a 1. Let's just look at number 3. Number 3, we have stories of Seders in the Seder. And so what I've labeled that is something that's a 3. If you skip that, your Seder is kosher. The four sons don't need to be said, but who has a Seder without 4 sons? So that's a number 2. So this chart will help you know when you plan your Seder, what to do. It helps you move through things a little bit more quickly. I just want to highlight one thing that I think is just really, really important. And that is this paragraph. It's called Vihisha Amda. Let me, just so we, maybe, hold on. I want to find the, well,
The Amda is very important because it's relevant in every generation.
okay, you took the words out of my mouth,
Oh,
right?
slicha.
No, not, no, 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 um, apology necessary, honey. You just, um, uh, okay. Well, I don't have the translation here, but you'll trust me on the translation. V'hisha amda lavotenu v'lanu. He with a capital H, who has protected, stood up for ourselves and our fathers, our forefathers, our ancestors. Shelo echad bivad amad aleinu l'chalutenu. For not one alone stood to destroy us. Ella shebachol dor vador. In every generation, omdim aleinu l'chalutenu. So what does this mean? Ella bechol dor vador omdim aleinu l'chalutenu. So it means, you know, first we had Sancherib. He tried to destroy us, but he didn't. Then the Assyrian Empire. After the Assyrian Empire came the Babylonian Empire, and they destroyed the temple. And after the Babylonian Empire came the Persian Empire. And we had Haman in the Persian Empire, and they tried to destroy us. And after the Persian Empire, we had the Greek Empire. And after Alexander the Great took over for the Persians, and during the during the Greek Empire, we had Antiochus from the Hanukkah story. And they tried to destroy us. And after Antiochus, we had the Hasmoneans. And after the Hasmoneans, we had the Romans. Did the Romans try to destroy us?
Yes.
Yes. Right? We had the Hadrianic persecutions. We had the Bar Kokhba rebellion. We had the destruction of the temple. After that, after the Romans, we got the Byzantines. Did the Byzantines try to destroy us?
We were already scattered by them.
Well, the Byzantines, of course they did. The Byzantines were the one who introduced the idea of the true cross. The Byzantines were the ones that introduced the idea that the Jews killed Jesus, that Jews were really the partners of Satan, right? And so for the next, I don't know, several thousand years, the influence of the Byzantine trying to destroy us. After the Byzantines, right, you had the Crusaders. And the Crusaders tried to destroy us? Yes. Did they actually destroy some communities? Yes. Right? Then after that, you had the Muslims. Did the Muslims try to destroy us? The answer is, at times, yes. They too tried to destroy us, right?
The Ottoman Empire
I didn't say the Ottoman, I said the Muslims.
or the Muslim? Okay, fine.
Right? The Ottoman Empire largely was good to the Jews, but
Very good.
as long as we stayed in our place, right? There are then after then you have the Khmelnytsky massacres, you have German anti-Semitism pushes the Jews to Poland, you have the expulsion of the Jews from Spain and Portugal and the Inquisition, right? We could go on and on and on and on and on and on, right? Because there's so many different generations to do this, right? But God has rescued us from their hands. If you ask me, this is the one paragraph of the Seder which is uncontrovertibly true in the present. Right? In a way, to me, this encapsulates the real broad message of the Seder. Why? Because it is unquestionably true that you are sitting at a Seder, reciting a text that belongs to a people that have no business being at that table. Right? There are so many powerful forces that tried to destroy the Jew at so many different corners of history. And yet, here we stand, right? Here we stand. Last year, when we said this, we were in that Ramadan pause. The Biden administration was threatening to not give support to Israel. Our good friend Mr. Trudeau, had allowed the NDP to bring a motion so that Canada wasn't going to support Israel with arms sales, right? We were wondering, does the IDF know what it's doing, right? Can they be a deterrent to the rest of the world? The Iranians were shooting these massive missile attacks to Israel. Remember all that? And guess what happened this summer, right? This summer, no one would believe it. The Ayatollah had no clothes, as Dan Senor likes to say, and then Nasrallah got, not in this order, by the way. Then the beepers and the walkie-talkies and Nasrallah, right? And one after another, right? And then Sinwar is killed. There are so many different things that were essentially um, uh, remarkable victories of the Jewish people. And so I think it behooves us at this moment in our Seder to appreciate all of the necessary pushes and shoves at the hand of God to help us dodge the traffic of oncoming anti-Semites over thousands of years for you to be able to sit at the Seder. I think that that's just something you need to appreciate. When you say that, one of the ideas of the Passover Seder, one of the pieces of the story, and here I just want to just meditate for a moment on what does the story mean. There are different ways to tell the story of the Seder and of liberation. So just as an example of how those stories might go. You have one story, which is the story um, of personal liberation. Personal liberation goes like this. I am trapped. Whether I'm trapped in a job, whether I'm trapped in a political situation, whether I'm trapped by drug abuse, I can give you Haggadot, I can give you different Seders that will use each of those as a metaphor, right? So that the idea of Seder is a liberation. I'm going to be liberated from some aspect of being personally trapped, right? And that's a legitimate way of reading the Seder. It's Abdullah Cherut, from slavery to freedom, one kind of freedom. Another kind of version of liberation is the national liberation scenario, right? You had a historical people named the children of Israel that were subjugated to a historical taskmaster named Pharaoh, that they were liberated at a historical moment. They crossed the sea, they went to the desert, they entered the land of Israel, they became their own nation, right? So that is what we'll call political liberation. There is also spiritual liberation. This exists for sure in the Seder. I can, maybe if we have time, I will point out a couple of those moments of when spiritual liberation happens. Spiritual liberation means I recognize that my house had a target on it, that my house was set for destruction. My house was one of those houses where the angel of death was passing over. And what do you know? Pesach. God passed over my house. God made space for me to continue to exist. There is a recognition from me that there is a God in the world, and the God has expectations, designs, and provenance, hashgacha, I'm trying to think, control, rescue over my personal life, right? And it is not about politics. It is not about a drug problem or a bad boss. It is about a recognition that there is a God in the world, and that God intervenes in history for my personal benefit. And that is the spiritual liberation aspect of that. That's the aspect where you say, wow, I recognize that the Jewish people have no right to exist, but there is a God in the world who helps them to do so. And so that is the aspect of spiritual liberation. And you can put all of them into this paragraph. And I think it's important to try to experience that. Various rabbis have used different techniques on this. So, for example, the Rabbi Halberstam, I don't remember which Rebbe he is. The Sanzer Rebbe, I think. He used to tell the story of his escape from the Holocaust. Now, obviously, most of us don't have that kind of an authentic story, but we all have a story about how our families got here from Lithuania or Russia or Morocco or Poland, right? We have this. We can tell those stories. It might take you a little time to go back and figure that out. There are stories of historically of how our families may have survived. I just think it's important for us to appreciate that this moment of the Seder is a moment to be able to say, I feel the same thing that my ancestors felt when they were able to walk across that sea and say, the person trying to kill me was left on the other side of that sea. That sense of relief and rescue and refuge, we all should have it. And the question is, how do we go and find it? So I think that that's a very, very important important aspect of the Seder that I would encourage you to take part in. And I personally think that it is good to tell stories. I'm a very, very big believer in the power of a story to be what people listen to. I think that our minds are built for stories. So the more stories you can tell at your Seder, the better off you are. And you can tell stories of slaves in Egypt. You can tell stories of what slavery was like. You can tell stories of slaves in the Holocaust. You can tell stories of slaves in the times of the Romans. You can tell the story of the slaves who built the Roman Colosseum. All those are going to work. Just make them compelling stories. Okay, so now let me get back to a little bit to the way in which the Seder kind of unfolds a little bit, because I've been very theoretical, and I'm just going to summarize what we've done. We've said that there are five mitzvot of the Seder. Two of them are biblical, eating matzah and telling the story. We have said three of them are rabbinic. Those are the 4 cups of wine, the eating of maror, and the recitation of Hallel. Hallel are psalms of thanksgiving. It is a formal text, but there's also a sort of an emotional feeling behind this. You should be able to say, you want to think this year about, how the IDF regained its glory. Excuse me 1 second. Shmuel, I'm still giving my class.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, my children sometimes call me, and I don't know if it's an emergency. So you want to focus on the fact that the IDF, regained its glory. The hostages came home. You want to do something along those lines. That's great, because then you can say, Noah Argamani came home. I'm going to say Hallel. I'm going to give thanksgiving on that. Okay, so those are our mitzvot, and we talked about the recitation, and I emphasized a couple different things. I emphasized it should be in a language you understand. I emphasized it should be in an interactive manner, and I emphasized that you should be telling stories and trying to make it relevant. I also emphasized that you should look at that list and be very careful. One thing I didn't emphasize, but I will now, is you want to start your Seder on time. So you want to set your table before Shabbos. You want to make sure that absolutely everything that can be ready is ready beforehand. You don't want to waste any time, because this year, we're coming in off of Shabbos. Take a nap. Make your children take a nap. Make your grandchildren take a nap. Make sure everybody's on schedule for your Seder. That's the most important thing. Okay, so those are my general recommendations on telling the story. Let's now talk about food and technique. All right, so the first thing you're going to do, everybody sits down at the Seder, you're going to make kiddush. This year, your kiddush is going to include Havdalah. Do you need a Havdalah candle? No, because you will have 2 Yom Tov candles on the table, and those 2 Yom Tov candles on the table can serve as your Havdalah lights. You don't have to put them together. They are just fine to use. You can make the bracha on the fire with that light. After you finish making the kiddush, you're going to drink the kiddush. Now, this is where something very interesting transpires. The mitzvah is heseba. Heseba is meant to be, you're supposed to fake your luxurious life. And the way that this is in principle done, the classic way of doing it nowadays, this is very functional. I'm in a chair. You can see I'm in an armchair, or maybe you can't see, but it is an armchair. I'll swivel a little bit so you can see. And you put your left arm here. You take your cup. Hopefully it's not a paper cup, and you drink leaning to your left. Now, I think this is meant to be reminiscent of the good old Roman symposia with the chaise lounge, Cleopatra laying on her side, somebody dropping grapes in. That's sort of the way I envision that. This is meant to suggest that we are eating the way that luxurious people do. That here there's a sort of an implicit equation between luxury and freedom, and there is some truth to that. But we feign the luxury to be able to experience the freedom in a very physical way. We are not satisfied with just telling the story. We have to live the story. There are some who suggest that the reason you drink 4 cups of wine is because sometimes after 2 cups of wine, you're just not feeling free enough. So you need 3 and 4 to get all the way to free. Now, in Ashkenazic circles, there's a bit of a debate about how to actually accomplish this. The reason is that there was a rabbi, an Ashkenazic rabbi named Rabbi Eliezer ben Yoel Halevi, lives in the 12th century, and he says, when I go to fancy people's homes, they have backs on their chairs. So backs on your chairs is something which was introduced around the time of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yoel Halevi. And if you went to Buckingham Palace to dine with the king, I used to say dine with the queen, but now we don't have a queen. So I guess I have to train myself to say dine with the king, right? Don't sit in front of Charles like this, right? That's not how it's done. How do you sit in front of Charles? You have good posture, right? That's what the Rav Yos says. That's what today's reclining is, sitting up straight, right? Posture is the new reclining. Now, there's a debate. How do we follow? Do we follow the anachronistic way and sit like Cleopatra and Julius Caesar? Or do we sit like good, proper Emily Post, King Charles-y kind of people? And the answer is we split the deck. Men are anachronistic and women sit up straight. That's the general custom. Now, certainly women can lean and it's totally kosher, but women don't have to. But men, the general ruling is they cannot sit up straight. They should do leaning. If you don't have an armchair, which often is the case, you just use the edge of the table, tilt your chair just a little bit, and lean to the side. That is how you accomplish that. There are some modern rabbis who say, hey, wait a minute, you know what's really luxury? Right? What's really luxury is to have a living room. So you should do your Seder in the living room. That's Rabbi Yoel Ben Nun. It's a very interesting position. I don't know whether it satisfies all the halachic boxes, but certainly it's in the spirit of the idea. But I think it's important to just conceptually get in that mindset. This is a night where we feel luxurious. And so we lean, we try to show that, demonstrate that luxury. Let's just have a moment to talk about wine. How much wine should you drink? So the answer to that question is, I think it's about 4.5 ounces would be the size of the cup. And you're supposed to drink the majority of that cup. I'm going to just show you what I think is the
Times 4.
yes, for each cup. Now,
No problem. No problem here.
I'll tell you what I have bought and I think is the best choice. A regular wine glass is going to hold too much for you to drink. I'm just gonna.
Rabbi,
Yes. Yes. Sorry, Ita, I lost you. Did I lose everyone?
Oh, we're here, Rabbi.
Okay. Okay.
We're here, Rabbi. We're
All
here.
right. Okay. Good to know. Okay. All right. So you see, this is a glass. You can get them for it's $8 for a 6-pack of these at IKEA. Great. It's 21 centiliters, 7 ounces. I'm just so you know, I'm gonna just so we can appreciate the volume difference, right? This is 10 ounces. So you're supposed to, some people say you're supposed to drink the majority of the cup. So right, you're adding an extra 3 ounces to this glass. This is even the biggest wine glass. So this is I'm just suggesting people be thoughtful about how much they're putting into their ingesting in terms of wine. Another thing I would say in terms of wine is, you be mindful of the sugar content and the alcohol content of your wine. Typically, people use red wine for the Seder. It's traditional to use red wine. It symbolizes the blood when we take out the blood during the plagues to symbolize the suffering of the Egyptians. So the general approach is red wine. The wine of the Seder, also, you can dilute it with grape juice. You can even dilute it with water, 3.5 parts water to 1 part wine. That's, dilute as you need to, right? Different people have different requirements. Some people might just need to go to grape juice. If you can't drink grape juice or wine, then the next best thing I think would be tea. You would do 4 cups of tea instead. Did I lose Itai? Did you have a comment?
I had two questions. First, I didn't catch what you said about, you mentioned something with Rabbi Yoel Binun Seder,
Oh,
and about dilution. One have to keep in mind that the wine has already been diluted in a way. So
I'm relying on Rabbi Shimon Eider, who says that today's conventional wines can be. I'm just looking to see if I can find his instruction on that. I can read you his language, but while I'm looking for his language, I'll tell you about Rav Binun. Rav Binun says the idea behind the seba is to eat in a way of luxury that people have today, and his argument is that today's luxury, if you have a living room, if you can afford to have a living room, then that is sort of a way of haseba today, right? It is the way in which people would, in a contemporary fashion, show their luxury, and so he suggests that you hold your seder in the living room because that's the room that only rich people eat in.
by the
But
way,
isn't
this is the way my in-laws used to do that, and we adopted this
Oh,
this tradition. That
okay,
we sit on the table only for the meal, for
right.
the meal. The rest of the seder is on the couch or on the floor with big huge pillows. This is what we used to do.
Yes, um, I would love to be able to do that. Okay, so I even said when we planning the second Seder for the synagogue, I suggested that maybe we should rent couches, but I think that was too expensive for us to do. So we'll have to, please God, one day I'll be zocha to of merit to be able to do such a Seder. Now, reading you directly Rabbi Eider's words on this. So he notes the fact that in New York State, wines may contain as much as 33% liquid sugar, right? That would be like Manischewitz wine, right? Okay. He says the application. So how do you deal with it? Assuming wine contains 33% liquid sugar and the diluted mixture must contain less than 6 parts water to 1 part wine. Therefore, one may add up to 3.5 cups water to 1 cup of wine. One should add as little water as necessary for one to be able to drink it. Okay, so that's where I get the 3.5 cups water to wine. I guess it's based on the New York State laws, but I think that, and I think that's for sweet wines, because I think like if you buy a Cabernet Sauvignon, they're not really adding any sugar to it. So I think you're okay if you're doing that. Andy, you have a
Yes, a couple of things. First of all, even Cabernet Sauvignon has a fair amount of sugar, not like the other ones, but yes, it's
no,
still
but that's
sugar.
natural sugar from the grape, isn't it?
Sugar from the grape is still sugar.
No,
Sugar
but,
is
but
sugar.
no, okay, yes, I'm not. This is not a health
Right.
designation.
Yeah.
But that's, if it's
We-
squeezed out of the grape, it's going to be considered wine. And what this is you add corn syrup to it, then that's considered dilution. So
yeah,
then
that's a
if-
bad combination.
okay, that's a different conversation. That's a different conversation.
That's just this is a side remark. I always thought of a seva is the idea that free men sit that way, and slaves. I mean, we came from slavery to freedom. Slaves always stand straight, sit straight, waiting for the master to tell them what to do. And the idea, I find it stronger and convincing thought that free men can do a seva more so than slaves. Yes, also rich people, but primarily, in my opinion, is the freedom, free men, and not slaves, and not mishartim, and not servants.
So yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm going to give you a similar thing. In the days of the Romans, the rich people were fat and the slaves were skinny, right?
Yes.
And today, the rich people are skinny and the poor people are fat, right?
Yes.
Sometimes these things sort of go in. So yeah, I don't disagree with you. The Ravya's point is a good point, right? If you went to Buckingham Palace, Annie, if you were invited to Buckingham Palace, I guarantee you would not ask for a chaise lounge at the table with the king.
Exactly, because of his rank.
You would sit up. You would sit up straight. The throne of Edward, of King Edward, that wooden throne that the king sits on, is a high back chair. He sits straight. So the Ravya has a good argument to make. I think the question is, do we pretend do we go the extra mile to pretend like we're the free person of yesteryear, or do we act like today's free person? And all of that makes sense, right? There's arguments on each side. I'm just telling you what I think the way the halacha is understood today is you should actually lean when you drink for men, and Ashkenazic women can sit straight. Michael Geithner. Yes.
You're muted. You're muted, Michael. You're muted.
Mayor, you're muted. Unmute.
Okay, so the question is, where do you come into tea? How do you derive tea as a drink to have?
It's called Summer Medina. So it is a drink that you would serve to someone who is a guest in your house who is not thirsty. So,
is there is there a din of Chamar Medina regarding the Arba Kosot? It's for Avdallah and for Kiddush Shabbat morning, and even this is a dispute among the poskim.
So what? So you're right. What the question is, what do we do for someone who, let's say, I would only recommend this, I guess, for someone who's got an extreme health concern, right? So the question is, what do we do for people who cannot drink, right?
What example? The Gemara tells us that Rabbi Yehuda or one of the Tanaim had persistent headache until Shavuot because of the wine, the 4 glasses of wine that he drank, and this is brought as not as a fairy tales of the righteous, but as a halachic source.
But it might be a halachic source, and I appreciate that. But I think poskim these days are reticent to force someone to do something that will be contrary to their health. I'll give you a parallel example. The Talmud is pretty clear that pregnant women fast on Tisha B'Av, but many 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 people do uh, many people do not fast nowadays on Tisha B'Av because the rabbis are afraid to give advice that's contrary to their instruction. But fair point. So I will make the following. I will. I thought it was in Rabbi Eider. I don't see it right now, but I will trace it down in one of my other sources to see what the recommendation is for people who have allergies to, so I'm guessing what Itai is saying is, let's say someone has some anaphylactic reaction to grapes. And we just tell them, you don't have the mitzvah of the 4 cups, move on. When everybody else drinks, you don't drink. So that might be the answer, but this is a perfect place for me to end. That I can't say with great certainty that I remember where I found this source. So we'll leave this as the question to be resolved next week. All right. Thank you all for joining.